You mentioned that we're a society now run by women. And we had this whole thing with J.D. Vance and the childless cat ladies he got in, I guess, in trouble for with the media. And we are now in a situation where Kamala Harris is the nominee and may very well be the first female president, the first female leader of the free world, if you will. Um, Walk me through the last couple of months, because you have a situation where it looks like Donald Trump has a massive lead over Joe Biden. They dump him as a candidate. They bring her in. We're in this sort of afterglow period where she's this heavy media darling. Does this ever end? Is there an end to this glorious path she's on? Is she going to cruise to the presidency? What do we have over the? Give me the kind of the picture, the 50,000-foot picture from Jesse Kelly's perspective. What you're about that tall, so you can see from up there.
All right, Stu. So I know this portion of the show we're on your channel, so forgive me. I'm about to just like filibuster for 5 minutes here because I have a lot to say about this. So don't look. Feel free to yell or interrupt, but I have a lot to say about this. First, one is going to lead to two. You mentioned the whole woman thing, as I was talking about a feminized society. We have a society of people who have been, over decades, this didn't happen last year, really dumbed down and demoralized. And that was done intentionally because the communists took over the education system and they created a society full of morons. What is the end result of that? What is the end result of somebody? I mean, if you had someone in your life who was really, really stupid, you can make them do things, right? And you can almost program them to do things. One of my buddies one time, we went out of town and we paid him $5 to run through the hotel naked, slapping his rear end. And he did it because he's an idiot. You can make dumb people do anything. And we have dumbed down the United States of America to a point where you will have many people. I can't count how many times I've heard this in just the last week. They will say something that when you really break it down, doesn't make any sense at all. Ben Stiller came out the other day, the actor, Ben Stiller. I want to vote for Kamala Harris because she's a woman. Okay? You can find people on camera at every Kamala Harris rally out there. Well, she's a woman. Well, I'm going to vote for her because she's a woman. Now, breaking that down with any amount of logic whatsoever, how in the world does that help the United States of America? How is that at all important for the most important job in the world? It isn't. There's no argument you could make that being a woman is in any way a benefit if you're looking for a president of the United States of America. Yet millions and millions and millions of Americans in November, men and women, will go vote for Kamala Harris because she's a woman. That is a society packed full of dumbed down morons who don't even understand what they're saying anymore. There's no logical thinking. They can't break it down. And that's part of the reason, speaking of Trump, Harris, and I'll get to the poll number thing in a moment, that's part of the reason Democrats campaign the way they campaign at all times. Everything is the end of the world. Everything's worse than World War II and the Civil War. Trump is always, every Republican, actually, it's not just Trump. Every Republican's Nazi, Hitler, worse than Hitler. It's these over-the-top sayings, we always look at them and we roll our eyes, right? And I do too. Oh my gosh, these people are so dramatic. What is the deal? But it is extremely effective for a society full of morons to campaign that way. Go ask the Democrat in your life, whether it's a coworker, an aunt, a mother, a daughter, go ask them why they intend to vote against Donald Trump or why they dislike Donald Trump. You will get no answers that are any based in reality or logic at all. If you ask a Republican why they don't like Trump, they'll give you very specific things. Maybe they don't like the COVID, whatever. A Democrat cannot answer that question. At best, you'll get, January 6th. And here's a fun experiment for you. Tell them when they say that. Agree with them. Don't argue. Say that, yeah, January 6th, it was really, really bad. So you liked him before January 6th? On January 5th, you were a fan? Well, no. And ask them why. Why didn't you like him before January 6th? They can't answer the question. There's not an answer at all because it's a dumbed down, drone-like moron who's just been programmed over and over and over again by CNN, Joe Biden, whoever it is, that they're fighting Nazis, they're fighting Hitler. So there's no logic at all. And that brings us to the poll numbers. Poll numbers were bad because Joe Biden was an albatross bringing down the Democrat Party. The communists knew this. That's why they flicked him out the back door. They knew just losing him would help the polls. It was always going to be a close race, and it will be a close race.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on something that I think is a fascinating thing that I don't know. Maybe this was happening in our history, but I feel like it's new, where there's this dependence on people that are completely disengaged from the political process, a dependence on them to win elections. And there's this weird thing, you know, and I've seen it with the no tax on tips, how they're just ripping that policy off from Trump. Also, the price controls thing over the past couple of days, where they're adopting policies that have failed everywhere. Rent control, price controls. These are blatant failures. They've destroyed societies all over the world for as long as they've been tried. And to put those out there and say, well, actually, the reason why your grocery prices are high is because of the grocery store's 1.18% profit margin. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. The only conclusion I can come to is they have this level of certainty on the stupidity of the American voter, that they can get 51% of people in America to vote for them because they're so incredibly dumb that they won't know what they're doing is filled with complete lies. I mean, am I being too pessimistic here, Jesse?
I think you nailed it 100% correct, Stu. I've actually been saying this for a couple days, that I think that's their calculation. When I look at the Harris campaign, it's honestly, it's the Seinfeld campaign. It's a campaign on nothing. And I've never seen a campaign like this in all my time following politics. I've never seen a campaign based on nothing. The most similar campaign I could find would be Joe Biden. But even Joe Biden, he had policy positions. You know, he had things he was running on. Kamala Harris, she has no policy positions on her website. The only two positions she's taken publicly, as you pointed out, one, she just directly copied from Trump, and the other one is just open communism, which will cause starvation in the United States of America. But look, the term tipping point is overused, obviously, but the communists have been banking, again, for decades. For decades, there's a reason they took over the schools first. They've been banking on this. Can we dumb down enough people and import enough people so that at some point in time, it won't matter who we run and it won't matter who they run, we cannot lose. And you can make the argument, and I really can't argue against it, that the Joe Biden win, that was their confirmation that they've succeeded. He already ran a basement campaign, very few interviews. Remember how many times he got caught with note cards and stuff, Stu? I'm told to talk to Amber. He ran a campaign on nothing. He was yelling at people. It was bizarre. And yet, because the American society is so dumb, because the media won't carry enough water for them, because of who knows how many election day shenanigans, Joe Biden's now president. I say the communists learned from that and thought to themselves, why would we ever give an interview? Why would we have policy positions? We've imported millions and millions of new people to this country. We've dumbed down the millions of people who are here. And so you and me, we look at some online stupid social media campaign that Dome runs, like she's a brat. I'm 43, I don't even know what that means. And we laugh and we mock it. Maybe they know exactly who the American electorate is.
I mean, it's terrifying. It's terrifying to think that, because
it is.
You'd think I don't know, you had this idea that the country, if given the opportunity to acquire information, will be able to kind of see through this stuff. And because of the internet and because of places like the First and the Blaze, there are places where people can actually access information now. It's not like the old days where it was really hard to get the truth. You can find it if you look for it, but increasingly people just don't even bother looking. And more than that, there is this dynamic that happens where people get so locked into their opinion of which side they're on. You mentioned this with the Donald Trump thing. People can't even name why they don't like him. They can't even come up with the reason. They just know it inherently. And it's hard to argue with people when that is what their base is on. How do you dissuade someone from supporting a communist when their reason for supporting them is just sort of this ethereal glob.
I want to ask you a question. Are we allowed to do that on this portion of the show? I want to ask you one,
Yes,
Stu,
that's
because I
allowed.
find this to be
Officially allowed.
fascinating. I think it's a fascinating concept. You mentioned with social media and the internet and the knowledge available today. I mean, just think about this. It's a phone, standard smartphone like everyone else has. I could, if we weren't doing this show, I could be watching videos on rebuilding a car engine right now. I don't know how to rebuild a car engine. I could watch a step-by-step video on doing it right now. I could, I've done some construction work, but let's say I didn't know how to drywall or didn't know, I could figure it out in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There's a step-by-step video on everything. There's endless information. We live in an era where we should be, if access to information is what makes a human being wise, we should be the wisest, most reasoned, most logical thinking generation in the history of mankind because of access to information. You used to have to travel 50 miles to the local monastery in Europe to find a book. Many people would live their lives and never see a book. We have access to endless information and we've never been dumber. People can't complete a sentence. They don't know how to talk. I don't know why. So my question is, Stu, why?
The great question. I think part of it is, real struggle pushes people into a place where they struggle to find real solutions, right? When people face real strife and they're going through a situation where everything is on the line. I mean, think about the eras of human history. You mentioned 50 miles to get a book. This is a time when we have a 31-year-old life expectancy, right? Like you faced like plagues and dark times and horrible, horrible, horrible things. And you go back to even times here in the United States, slavery and all these dark periods that we've had. And then you go to World War II across Europe, how devastating that was. And in those times, because people are hit with the idea of needing to survive, they're looking for large answers to large questions. And you find that with principle. You find that in deep reading and a large search for concepts that are bigger than us. It's why faith was so important through all of these eras. And I don't know, this is just a theory. I'll throw it at you. You tell me if it makes any sense. But I think we've come to a place where, because of things like capitalism and freedom and faith, we've solved a lot of the big problems, right? We've solved these massive challenges that our ancient forefathers had to deal with. And like now we're dealing with really dumb crap, right? Like I always go back to when they were tearing down statues in the squares of all these places. They're tearing down statues of Southern leaders who advocated for slavery. Well, years and years ago, people had to deal with those people in power, and they were actually committing those acts, right? Now we're so offended and we're so oppressed by just the statue of that person standing in the town square, not doing anything, just there. And I think like when you get spoiled, you get soft, right? And I think people not having to face those challenges over a long period of time, they get soft and they don't have to worry about this anymore. And they don't look for the knowledge. They look on Twitter, not for, interesting political opinions and concepts, but things that support what they already believe, number one. And number two, pictures of whatever thirst trap they're looking for this particular week. The whole thing just seems like a bad way to build a society. And because there are still people at the top that I know you talked about in your book and you do on your show all the time, those people at the top have that old school mindset. They still are looking for that giant switch of humanity to control them, to push them into a position of what I would believe is, and I know you would as well, just darkness, but what they believe is some, I don't know, utopia. And they're still there pushing for those things. And the pushback is disappearing, I feel like, day by day. And honestly, I think it's a terrifying thing for the future of not only America, but the rest of the globe.
No, I think you really nailed it with that, with the reasons for that. Wisdom, why do you gain wisdom and knowledge? It's generally, very few people will seek it out just to seek it out. It's out of necessity, right? I come from a construction family. My grandpa did construction. My dad did construction. Why did my dad know how to pour concrete, know how to grade soil? What, is it because he just got excited about that one day and went and started asking people? No, that's how you had to feed your family. So you better learn how to freaking do that. But today, I mean, what don't we have, Stu? We have everything. I'm sitting here in a studio. I have unlimited fresh drinking water. I know that sounds stupid, but again, we don't realize what that means. I have a bottle of it right here, a cup of coffee here. I'm 15 feet away from unlimited drinking water. It's 72 degrees in the studio because we set it just perfectly, even though it's 1,000 degrees in Texas today. What do we need? On my way to work today, I drove in a climate-controlled pod listening to a World War II documentary because I'm a nerd. We have everything we need kind of handed to us. And unless you're actively seeking out wisdom, you're not going to get it. I really think you nailed it. We just got too rich and soft.